Legion is here, and oh my god, everything's on fire! Except for, apparently, the servers, which are handling the new expansion, and a DDoS attack like a champion. So based on my experiences with the beta, and now my experiences with live, it's not actually terrible. It's not bad at all. It's, in fact, one of my favorite expansions in a long time. The story doesn't suck, the gameplay doesn't suck, there's a lot of stuff in it that just doesn't suck. Then again, my final judgment of this is going to be based on the endgame and how Blizzard supports it, so I'm nowhere near a final answer yet. But there is one thing about World of Warcraft Legion that is super duper important, and that I do have an answer on, that I have made up my mind on. This is a feature that isn't really probably on the back of the box. I don't know, I bought a digital copy. You gotta read the back of the box, you tell me if I'm wrong. You see, every single expansion that comes out for World of Warcraft tends to have a big thing that it brings with it. Some important gimmick that adds to and changes the game. Burning Crusade brought us flying. Wrath of the Lich King brought us adjustable raid difficulty and size. Cataclysm brought us looking for raid and the whole revamp of the old world. Mists of Pandaria brought us Chinese food. And Legion certainly has no shortage of those. You've got artifact weapons, you've got crazy mythic dungeons with adjustable difficulties, you've got all sorts of crazy crap going on. But above all of them are the feature that Blizzard isn't hyping up. Probably the most important feature of them all. And I call it the Legion Sync. So let me explain. So in Legion, if you've actually given it a shot, you might realize some interesting things about how the game progresses you through content. In fact, the fact that you could kind of go wherever you want, except for Suramar, which is apparently the best zone, but whatever. You get to choose what of the 4 other zones you want to visit first, and in what order you do them. I mean, I'm doing them in a weirdly borked order with my live character. It's weird. But you get to choose. Not only that, but every single one of them syncs automatically to your character level. Enemies sync directly to you, instead of being, just arbitrarily leveled as you go. Everything tends to be your level. This extends to everything from quest rewards to experience gains to dungeons. There's just an enormous amount of syncing going on, and it's all individual to you. This, my lovely viewer, is the Legion syncing technology. It does all sorts of cool stuff, and it feels very intuitive. In fact, you probably barely notice it happening. Everything kind of just fits into place. Meanwhile, on the back end, if you actually think about it, it's weirdly mind-vexing, considering the fact that this sync is individual, which means if 2 people are fighting the same monster, they both see it at different levels based on their level, which is just... what? Probably has something to do with, normalization and converting the damage numbers into direct percentages against the singular percentage bar that represents the character's actual life bar, and then giving you the illusion of the character's stats, but whatever, it's friggin' weird. So what, Orange Hatter? So everything levels up to the character level. What the hell does that even mean? Why is that the most important thing? I mean, have you seen artifact weapons? They're kinda snazzy. Well, this entirely changes how Blizzard Entertainment and its developers can approach content and how they deliver it to the player. If you're playing Legion Live right now, you might have realized something interesting that Legion likes to do. It sends you all over the place. I mean, if you did your artifact quests, you might find yourself in Northrend, or Stonecore, or anywhere. It'll just send you wherever the hell it wants. On top of that, there's a lot of story quests that will send you to old places in the old world, all over the place. This is all thanks to Legion's syncing technology. This means they can sync content in those zones if they need to, so it makes it a little bit easier to write content in them. Every expansion has you going to different places, but usually they phase you in, and then, once you're phased in, it's all a different place, really. But with Legion Sync, they could technically have that content be anywhere, especially if they started syncing up older zones. It also allows content to be non-linear, in a sense. I mean, in terms of leveling content in Legion, you're actually given a choice of where you go and when. You can break off a zone halfway through and move to another zone, and it will not affect your progression. You can start in one area and move to another. You can do the zones in any order you want, which is actually kind of friggin' cool. It gives you a lot of agency. It allows you to choose what you do, when you do it, how you do it. You can play with your friends regardless. Even if they started in a different zone, you could go join them. And then even when you're done the leveling content, you've got the concept of world quests, which basically capitalize on this system extremely well, Max level questing can now take you back to areas you were before. You can see how battlefields have changed. You could go basically anywhere, because instead of in Warlords of Draenor and previous expansions, where you had to have a little cordoned off area for max level content, everything is now max level content. So it opens up an enormous amount of options for how you pursue things like daily quests or world quests. An example of this might be, say you started in Azuna and you did the Demon Hunter quest chain first, because that's the first one you get, right when you arrive. You could come back here at level 110 for a world quest to see how the battlefield has changed. Maybe the demons have pushed further and you have to repel them again. Maybe those wards have gone down. Maybe a new demon general has taken over. It just changes and removes restrictions on how Blizzard can make content. It gives them more creative freedom, because now they don't have to cordon off different areas. Everything is open to them, which gives them a lot more freedom to be creative and make cool stuff. But how about how this Legion sync affects other content, like dungeons, for example? If you're playing live right now, you will notice that all of the dungeons seem to level all the way up to 110, no matter what dungeons they are, whether they're one of the starting 4 or one you unlock along the way. Before I really get into why this is important, let me take a detour into another video game called Final Fantasy XIV. You see, in Final Fantasy XIV there is a feature called the roulette system. What this does is it's kind of like your random daily dungeon, only it syncs you to that dungeon, and that dungeon could be at basically any level. There are different roulettes for different things, similar to, say, Random Legion Dungeon and Random Legion Heroic, but essentially it will random you into whatever dungeon is in that section. For the random leveling roulette, that means literally any dungeon in the game. This does a couple of things. First of all, it keeps it a little bit more interesting, because instead of being thrown randomly into a pool of 8 to 10 dungeons, you're thrown randomly into a pool of over 30. It also helps keep older content more relevant, and it makes it easier for lower level players to get into dungeons. When you've got hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the random leveling queue, queuing up for their bonus experience for the day, or their bonus esoterics for the day, those queues go a lot faster at lower levels for people who are still leveling through those dungeons, which is a big bonus. With the Legion sync, you could essentially apply the same concept to dungeons in Legion. There's a big difference, though. Legion does it better. Oh god, Final Fantasy people, please don't kill me, but it does. It just does. Alright, so in Final Fantasy, you're actually leveled down to the dungeon that you random into, removing abilities you may have gained, or removing stat bonuses, or syncing your item level to that dungeon so you can do it effectively. In Legion, it does it the other way. The dungeon is leveled up to you. So if you do a level 102 dungeon at level 110, the dungeon to you is a level 110 dungeon. The big difference there is all of the loot from the dungeon also levels up to you, which makes the loot continue to be relevant to you. This makes dungeons more interesting. It makes them more relevant. It gives them more staying power, which is good, which is really friggin' good. But it also does one more thing that I think is probably the most important thing that the Legion sync has the potential to do. Sadly, this is the one that depends most on Blizzard actually doing it, because it really is something that looks forward to the future. A concept I like to call content immortality. Content immortality is the idea that content remains relevant between expansion packs. Now, this is something that Blizzard has always kind of struggled with, as I've always believed that World of Warcraft has had this flavor of the month mentality when it comes to content, especially more recently as it's gone to a one raid per raid tier system where there's no actual progression through previous raids. Final Fantasy XIV has a measure of content immortality through the roulette system, but the Legion sync can allow for all content to constantly be relevant, which might sound a little bit weird, but on a zone basis, it allows developers a huge amount of freedom with how they design content. You might actually get a World of Warcraft instead of a current continent of Warcraft. This could also affect dungeons in ways that is really actually kind of interesting. Imagine randoming into your dungeon queue and popping into a dungeon from 3 expansions ago, but it's synced up to your level, so it's still relevant to you. It gives you more variety in your dungeon queue, I guess, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, imagine if your random heroic queue included a random set of 40 dungeons instead of just 8. It'd be much more interesting, you get much more variety. Even if they are older dungeons, it allows you to plunge into older content that's still relevant to you because it's synced to your level. But most importantly, content immortality means that you can do one incredibly important thing that Final Fantasy XIV has allowed me to do, but World of Warcraft just can't. It allows us to go back and experience content the way it was intended to be experienced at that level, by syncing it up to your character. This is such a powerful idea. I talk to people who've come to World of Warcraft about my experiences in Karazhan in a very real sense, but they'll never really truly understand how much fun it is to fight the Shade of Iran, or take down Netherspite, or bring down Prince Malhazar for the first time, in what I consider to be the greatest raid ever created, even though it's, a little bit sluggish at times. Karazhan is really something that's lost to me until next patch, apparently, where they're re-releasing it as a 5-man, but whatever. This sync can allow people to experience that content, re-experience that content, if it's applied to those pieces of content, which hopefully Blizzard does. I understand it's going to be a whole ton of work, but I think over time it might be worth it to create more interesting content that people can engage in, as it was originally meant to be engaged in. I'm having a surprising amount of fun with World of Warcraft Legion, like more fun than I expected to have back when it was announced. But what interests me most is that most important feature, that Legion sync, that technology that could bring the world together and make it a little bit more interesting to explore and engage in content. It could make content more relevant, and it already is being used in some really cool ways. And the depth of its potential is really friggin' awesome. So let's hope that Blizzard manages to keep things going and we don't get like 14-month-long content rounds with just nothing. Because that shit's gonna make or break this expansion and potentially this game. And I would rather not like this whole new creative outlet for you guys kind of squandered immediately because you guys fucked up with content. Oh, Jesus, thank you very much for watching this episode on the World of Warcraft Legion sync. I've been playing a lot of Legion these last couple of days, I'm sorry. But it's been a lot of fun. I'm actually quite enjoying it. If you're interested in raiding in Legion and you're looking for some friends to do that with, I'm running a Discord server. You can find information on that in the channel description. Not the video description, the actual channel description. You go to the channel, you go to like the About tab, it's in there. But you can come join us, and we're going to be doing some raiding in Legion, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. We also do stuff in Final Fantasy, and maybe a little bit of stuff in WildStar in the future. That would be cool. But thank you very much for watching, and thank you for allowing me to plug my little Omni Guild. If you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe. It's a huge support to the channel. And otherwise, you continue to have a freaking fantastic day. Look at me, I'm just falling all over my words today. God, I'm the worst. I'm leaving this in, though. Enjoy!